We're a couple years behind the evolutionary curve, let's call it, in comparison to women. And you all have done so much work over the past however many years. But the real evolution of this work eventually will be us coming together. It has to be in unity. That's where the depth of healing happens.
Welcome to the Betty Rocker Show, the place to be to nourish your mind, love your body, and rock your life. What's up, rock stars? Coach Betty Rocker here. Welcome back to the show. My guest today is Traver Boehm, the founder of the Uncivilized men's movement, the fastest growing men's movement in the world. He's the author of Today I Rise and Man UNcivilized, as well as a 2-time TEDx speaker, men's coach, and podcaster. Drawing upon an eclectic background ranging from professional bodyguarding and mixed martial arts to a master's degree in traditional Chinese medicine and meditation, Traver counsels men, women, and couples on how to better understand men's mental health and relationship difficulties. With his passion for people and the unique lens through which he sees the human experience, Traver is a highly sought-after teacher in the fields of consciousness, intimacy, and personal development, all topics that I find highly relevant in our modern era where self-love, communication, and intimacy are all key to our sense of connection and happiness. As a heads up, there will be some adult language in today's show, so if that bothers you, this might be one to sit out, but I hope you'll stick around because the conversation is an important one for anyone wanting to understand the men in their lives on a deeper level and gain insights that will serve them in their relationships. So please join me in welcoming Traver to the show. Welcome, Traver. It's so good to have you.
What a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yes, and I'm sure you get this all the time with your name being so unique. People are like, Traver, wait, how do I spell that? Or wait, isn't it Trevor? Or
Your audience will love this. This was a couple months ago. I stopped someone in an interview at like the 14-minute mark and I was like, hey, it's not Travis. We got to start over. I'm okay with most things, but like we're starting over here. I'm not going to let this go a full hour. And they'd be like, what's your Instagram handle? Well, it's Traver Boehm. Oh, wow. We just did the whole interview under Travis. Yeah.
That's
so
hilarious.
Thank you for asking.
Well, as someone else who, has a unique name and unique first name and sort of gets a lot of questions of like, well, how do you spell that? Is that like the cheese? And, it's just something that I relate to you on and thought was interesting to bring up because it is also extremely memorable when we think about it from the other frame. I love that name. I think I'd never heard it before actually and thought it was super cool. So welcome to the show again, Traver. We've all got your name right now and we're all going to remember it. And it's been so, ever since I was exposed to your brand and read your book, Man UNcivilized, and saw what you were doing in the world, I was just so, I don't know, I just felt like we were living this, parallel on the male-female spectrum of wanting to just really elevate the conversation around personal responsibility and this modern world we live in as men and women and what that looks like and how we can heal ourselves, help each other, be a team like, you've said. And I just think your work is so relevant to both women and men, even though I know you primarily teach a male audience. So thanks again for being on my show. I know we've got mostly female listeners, but such relevant content, I think.
Thank you. And I didn't get this, Bree, in the beginning. When my book first came out, I took a look at stats like 6 months, 8 months in, and 72% of the copies had been bought by women. And 90% of the people who had bought a copy and then come back and bought multiple copies had been bought by women. So it was an opening for me to say, wait a minute, this isn't just a male conversation. I need to speak to men not privately, alone. And often, last night I got brought into another women's group to speak about men and to answer questions about men and to shed light on some of the ways or some of the aspects of being a man that most women don't know. And a lot of men at this point don't know. So it's a unique position to be in, but I agree with you. There's going to be a point, and there have been certain points throughout the past couple of years of my work when we come together and we say, first, you guys, men, we got a lot of work to do. we're a couple years behind the evolutionary curve, let's call it, in comparison to women. And you all have done so much work over the past however many years. But the real evolution of this work eventually will be us coming together. It has to be in unity. That's where the depth of healing happens. That's where the depth of safety happens. Otherwise, we're just in these isolated silos, right?
Yes. And I think this might be the perfect time for you to share a little bit with our listeners about what your manifesto is about when it comes to how you coach men. What are some of the defining principles of that work? What do you believe men are missing? And tell us more about that.
I break my whole movement down to two sections. And the movement, the education, the speaking points, and the things that I want men to have are a primal side. I want them to be in touch with that which is naturally masculine. And we're going to use these terms heteronormatively, and women have a masculine energy, men have a feminine energy, yet primarily men have a masculine energy. And all of us have testosterone, and that's a thing. And so I want guys to step into the primal side of, hey, it's okay to want to build something. It's okay to want to protect. It's okay to want to be strong. It's okay to want to penetrate the world with ideas, with who. It's okay to be who you are. I love to pick up heavy shit. I love to lift weights. I fought in a cage. I like to shoot guns. I like to surf. I like to do guy stuff. Now, the challenge is that's been available to us up until the last 20 years or so without much issue, but it was never tempered. It never had the divine side. It never had consciousness, right? It never had emotional intelligence. It never had permission to feel. It never had the skill, right, to actually have an intelligent conversation with a partner, an emotionally intelligent conversation, I should say. No one taught me in junior high, this is what holding space is. This is what feminine energy looks like in a female partner or even in a male partner. It doesn't matter. So my whole ethos is based off of, guys, first, you got to have access and understanding of both sides, or you won't have conscious choice between the two. Right? So I know men that are, I'll say, very powerful men who are far on the divine side, far on the consciousness side, far on, for lack of a better term, the feminine side. But they're there by choice. They're not there because of wounding. They're not there because they secretly have mommy issues. They're not there because they secretly want to just sleep with a lot of women, so they're wolves in sheep's clothing. And I know now a lot of men who are doing extraordinary things in the world that without the temperance of that consciousness would get looked at and say, wow, that's, quote, toxic. And so really the book was a permission slip to men of an idea of, hey, the paradigm we've been given is broken. Now, when I was looking through this, and this was all personal, I was searching for this myself, and I couldn't find it. I couldn't find the balance between the two. It felt like societally, I got to choose between like Rambo Navy SEAL or, no offense to anybody on here, vegan feminist poet. Like those were my two options as a dude. And no one was talking about what was underneath either of them. No one was talking about trauma. No one was talking about fear. No one was talking about hurt and pain and reactions to that. No one was talking about this thing called the shadow. No one was teaching. I had no idea. It was like literally like, wait a minute. You guys taught me the Pythagorean theorem, which I've never used once, and no one taught me what holding space meant or the opportunity of what masculine energy will do when presented with when a woman is standing in front of me and I'm deeply grounded. Holy smokes. How did we go off? How did we go wrong here? So I know I just answered a short question with a long answer, but really to me, it's the primal and the divine. And we take those two and we don't tell men anymore, hey, you got to go left or you got to go right. We say you have to go in the middle or have access to both. And Brie, when I threw that idea out on, like, this was just an idea, 4 years ago, literally, I think it was 4 years ago last week, I have a photo when I was like, uncivilized, what an interesting word. I wonder if this would fit with men if we took this side and we put them together. And when that happened, I just got chills. My life changed forever because I got flocks of men reaching out to me saying, God, this is what I've been waiting for. I didn't want to just be a hard ass. I didn't want to just have a stiff upper lip. I don't want to just man up, nor do I want to collapse. Nor do I just want to be led entirely by my emotions and give up and be ashamed of being a man and apologizing for being a man. I wanted men to say, you got to own your power, and you have to own even more so the responsibility that comes with being in a body that's bigger, stronger, and faster than 80% of the planet and infinitely more aggressive. And in a culture that seems to be celebrating a lack of responsibility on our part. It's like men are like, we're like Congress. We just get to do whatever we want. And then if no one likes it, we just like make a fake rule of like, well, that's actually okay. We all got together and we decided that this thing that we were doing, which was horrible to the planet and women and children, that's okay. Like there's some backroom deal that I haven't been invited to the men's club. But it felt like that's where we were.
This was your manifesto for men. Yeah. And I love what you brought up about the personal responsibility and, taking accountability for how the patriarchy has worked and treated other people who are not part of it for a lot of the history of civilization and the ramifications of that. And the society that we currently live in, we have this opportunity. You had this opportunity to call men up, to call them up to their higher self and to blend the more what we term the masculine aspects of their nature with, if you're making a cookie out of a man, you take his masculine aspects, you blend in some personal responsibility, you work on anything that's in the trauma area so that a man can fully see himself and then see other people and understand his sense of worth and also the responsibility he has for all of his masculine attributes and his ability to also be a creator in the world. And you had such a great analogy of two different paradigms in your book. One was the Marlboro man, right? And one was the sensitive new age guy, the nice guy. And I really related to those two, especially looking back generationally and even in my own family at how, like in my grandfather's generation, I feel like the Marlboro man was really like, that was the essential man, and a lot of things came out of that generation that feel like we still feel the ramifications of today because there wasn't enough softness. There wasn't enough of the aspects that we're talking about right now with, the kindness blended with the masculine. And, I see like my father's generation is trying to blend the nice guy but there was a lot of confusion in that because there was like, well, I need to be acceptable in society, but I also still need to be a man and I need to be accepted by other men because it's like a dog eat dog world. And there's like that aspect of it. And then we see so many broken relationships in that generation and in our generation as well as a result, because like you've said, this has everything to do with how partners connect, understanding this dynamic of ourselves. The work starts with you working on your own story and your own history. And then figuring out how to have true intimacy with a partner has to have first done the work on ourselves. But I was really curious about you and your own history. Like, I know you've done so many different things in your life, and you said you kind of came to this work and you needed it. Will you share a little bit about your own history and like why this work was so needed for you?
Yeah, for sure. It's a cliche story, but it may sound cliche. Essentially, I was the quote guy who had it all, right? I had a business in Santa Barbara, California. I was making a ton of money. I ran a gym. I could come to work when I wanted. I just wore board shorts. I worked out every day. I was married to the woman of my dreams. Everything was going the way it should have. We had a baby on the way. Things were cracking. But there was an asterisk there. I want to be like, there was a little like, whoa, we'll get to the asterisk in a second. And in very short order, I lost it all. My ex-wife miscarried, told me that was a sign from the universe that our marriage should be over and she'd be gone within an hour, and walked out one morning. And my business partnership essentially came apart the next day for completely different reasons. And so I had the beautiful opportunity of kind of standing there naked going, who the hell am I now? And the asterisks, I drink almost every day. I smoke pot every day. I look at a ton of porn. I have to exercise twice a day to sleep. I don't really sleep. I pace the halls of my house. I'm not happy. I'm not joyful. I'm not safe to be around. I'm explosive. I'm angry. Or I'm completely shut down and numb. And I say that now in hindsight, having so much compassion for the man then, because I wasn't taught any of this stuff, Brie. So, I landed on rock bottom face first and like ground my face in some dog poop down there for a year. And then was like, okay, I want to learn to answer these questions. And I went on a big journey. I did the Eat, Pray, Love for Dudes version. And, came out of it. And when I came out of it, I really did have the question of, and I had been introduced to men's work on that journey. I worked with Michaela Boehm for a bit, worked with Robert Masters, and just got it like, wait a minute, what is this thing that's been missing in my life? Oh, men. How come no one's ever asked me, who are you as a man? I'm 40 years old. This question has never, ever been asked to me. What is my responsibility as a man? What is my role? What's my job? There's a job description, like no one had ever given it to me. And so I dove headfirst into it because when I came out of it, I took a look at the male landscape, and what I saw was an epidemic of unexpressed pain. I saw, and I know this is hard for a lot of people to hear because men are the perpetrators in this culture, but I looked at them and thought, wow, you are overflowing with pain and you have no idea. So just like me, you drink it, smoke it, jerk it, fuck it, exercise it, ignore it, bypass it, pretend it's not there, shut down, all the things. Because one, culturally, you haven't been given permission to even acknowledge that stuff's real. And then two, even if you do, there's no guidebook, right? Like, we don't want to go to therapy. Like, that's weird. It's for like crazy people. That's
or it's a sign of weakness, right?
Totally.
In the culture.
Totally. It's a sign of weakness. And here's one of the secret male rules is we'd rather be dead than considered weak. So we do this. We kill ourselves in record numbers. So I looked at the statistics too. It's like, all right, I'm a dude. I'm going to go logic on this. We lead every negative statistic that doesn't have breasts and ovaries involved, whether it's addiction, violence, prison, obesity, homelessness, like you name it. Domestic violence, like all the bad things, we're winning in that game, unfortunately. So I was like, but what's the root? I'd come out of 4 years of acupuncture school where every day we were taught, like, go for the root. Don't worry about the branch. You got to treat the root. I was like, so what's the root of this problem? And it seemed culturally that the root was, and this was right in the middle of Me Too. So I should preface like what this time period was. The root seemed to me that at that point, the culture was shaming anything that actually was masculine. Probably for very good reason, because it was the reaction to, as you said, like thousands of decades of silence and coercion and manipulation and subjugation and ignoring all of that on our part. So it was like, oh, it's in the culture, male bad. That was what I saw. It's what I read every morning in the newspaper or on CNN. But then here's what we were doing to ourselves, guys were doing to ourselves, was saying, oh, by the way, this is bad, but here's what's also bad. Compassion, empathy, kindness, care, sensitivity, connection. I'm about to use a really dirty word for men. Intimacy. Oh, it was terrifying. I'm okay. We're good, right? Yeah. We were the ones who were shutting that down, right? And so I looked at the root of it and said, oh, that was me. That was me. Clear as day. My ex-wife used to ask me all the time, how are you? And like, how the hell do you think I am? I'm fine. Like, look at my results, right? Look at the gym. Look how much money I make. Look what I look like naked. I'm in great shape. I'm an ex-professional fighter. What could possibly be wrong with my life? Just don't look at what I do at night. Don't look what I do when you're not home. Don't look at what I do, that I'm not talking about publicly. But like, look at what I do. And I felt like in order for me to become the man that I wanted to be, which was whole, which was healed, which was integrated, then I had to put myself through a process. And I did. And I came out of it and went, wow, where the hell was this 20 years ago? this would have solved so many of my own problems, and it would have solved so much of the chaos and mayhem and hurt that I've probably put out into the world. And I'm not leading many statistics in that realm. But I acknowledge that, yeah, like I just didn't know. So that's why it became so personal, right? And then instantly, I became such an advocate and a fan and a cheerleader for men. And in the same vein, when I'm going to hold you guys to a standard that will blow your damn mind, you're going to get away with nothing. I don't give a shit what your story, your bullshit story is about why it's okay that you're doing all the bad things that you're doing. That's no longer acceptable. Because here's the permission slip to go to therapy, to join a men's group. Here's the permission slip to sit in a circle with other men and go, wow, I'm not doing okay. And I'm taking it out on my kids. I'm taking it out on my wife. I'm taking it out on the planet. I'm taking it out on myself. That's no longer, you don't get to hide anymore.
One of the things I loved, this is a quote from your book, "The uncivilized man has his father's work ethic, his mother's heart, and his brothers and sisters' best interest. He is his brother's keeper, his partner's protector, and his children's teacher." What a beautiful vision of what a man can be in the world.
Thank you. Yeah. And I'm not trying to pick on the culture. I just never heard that before. No one had said that to me. So I didn't know. And here's the beauty that a lot of people don't understand about men. We learn by modeling. I see it. Okay, I can do that. I know how to do that now. I just watched you do it. But what had we watched? We had watched our fathers. We had watched our grandfathers. We had watched a culture that still celebrates numbness, that celebrates alcohol, that celebrates anger, right? That puts down feelings, that puts down emotion, that puts down, especially on our end, sadness, grief, trauma. Like we're not going to talk about that stuff in the male culture. Yet that is the root of, in my opinion now, 99% of the problems we see in the world is someone going, wow, you are hurt beyond belief and you have no idea what to do about it.
Have no idea, how to handle it. I don't know if you're a fan of Gabor Mate's work, but I really, I'm such a fan of his work around addiction, and that the root of it is truly based in trauma, and how much that kind of has influenced what's happened to us as people, like why we see such long-term struggles. And I guess it's really healing to hear you talk about these things, because as women, I think we grew up too learning about what to expect from men, from watching our fathers and our grandfathers and our mothers and grandmothers' responses to them. So there is this sort of like long-term lineage of what we're all learning about how we're supposed to behave. Right. And as adults, both men and women, we have these opportunities to rewrite the script that we grew up with, so that we can now model something a little more conscious to the future generations, which is what I see and hear, that you are striving for with this work. You want to like I said, call these men up. And that's such a powerful approach to helping to heal this sort of divide between men and women, and really all people. I feel like it's so important.
Yeah, thank you. It's a big part of it too, and not to take away from the importance of the healing that's so necessary between men and women, but it's also the healing that's so necessary between men and men.
Yes.
And how many of these guys grew up in the same house with a father who was an alcoholic or was abusive, beat the shit out of his mother, beat the shit out of him, sexually violated him, whatever it is. And now that man's walking around as a ticking time bomb for both men and women. And it's, you use the word, it's like there's so much healing that's necessary right now. But we're not going to get there unless we get real. And I wasn't going to get there unless I spoke it and wrote it and displayed it in a way that was just purely who I was. So it was going to be unapologetic. It was going to be raw. It was going to be in your face, but it was also hopefully going to be inspiring for these guys to go, wow, you talk a lot about emotion. Talk a lot about crying during your divorce and going to therapy and like sobbing on the floor and pulling grief from the depth of your soul out. Huh, that's weird. But you have cauliflower ear, so I may listen to you. But,
Right.
okay.
Like you somehow are manly enough for me to maybe listen to these like more sensitive things that you want to share with me. And like you have an interesting history, right? Like it's full of these dichotomies.
Yeah.
And it makes me think of like one of your paradigms of be dangerous, but not a danger, and acknowledging your pain and like all of these things. Like you've got the training and the meditating. Like it's like two ends of a spectrum that you've brought together, and letting men know, hey, it's safe to be in the in-between, anywhere in between these two things, as long as you are striving to knit them together in some way in your life.
Yeah, and not disavow one over the other.
Right.
And writing this book and launching all of this was hugely healing for me, because so much of my life was stuck between the two binaries of I would spend my mornings, I think I wrote about this, like down in Orange County with a group of some of the gnarliest professional MMA fighters on the planet, just getting the bejesus beaten out of me and beating the crap out of people. And then I would come home, take a shower, and drive to Chinese medicine school, which is 95% women, 95% crystals and chakras and incense. And I'd be like, okay, you think what I did in the morning is insane. The guys in the morning think that what I'm doing now is just ludicrous. So I don't have any people. I'm kind of the black sheep of both families here. And so in the first time that I actually got to bring this together, went, I don't have to pick masculine or feminine here. I can't. I have to actually learn to integrate the two. I have to stop apologizing at night for what I do in the morning and apologizing in the morning for what I'm going to go do at night. I'm just going to stop apologizing, actually. Step one.
Yeah.
And that was the big, like, okay. Then all of a sudden, all those years of duality created that tension and energy, and it went woof into the message and into the movement. And I still think that's why it just slaps guys upside the head.
Yeah. It basically, like, I feel like it uncovers a truth that was sort of hidden in plain sight, that men were like longing for this. And that's why it's gotten such a, you've created such a movement, with it. And I want to ask you what you think the ramifications are for a man who does this work. What impact can it have on his life, with his relationships, with himself? What do you see from people who have done this work with you?
Bree, it changes everything. I'm not using this as like a marketing pitch. It just changes everything about that man. One, it uncovers a lot of the permission that he didn't give himself to perhaps do something completely different than what he's doing day to day, right? It also teaches him how to be in relationship. So a lot of men who are in bad relationships, they don't know that they're actually allowed to say, hey, this doesn't feel good. I've never had positive relationship modeled. I've never had intimacy modeled. I've never learned that my partner can be really upset in front of me, and that has nothing to do with me. So I don't need to get defensive, angry, or upset myself. This is like mind-boggling, right? So I watched every area of their lives open, is probably the right word, and then expand. And some of the unintended consequences, a lot of these guys quit drinking. Almost all of them, because it's something that I harp on, get off porn. So what do you know? Now all of a sudden you have 1,000 men who were in relationship with primarily their computer screens, and then secondarily their partners, having to go, wow, I also may have some insecurities here. I may have some desires that I'm afraid to share. I may have some things I want to explore. And that's not just in the bedroom. That also necessitates the same opening and expansion just in the intimacy realm. These guys actually learn that they have feelings. I know this may sound ludicrous to women, but usually when I get a new group of guys and I say, like, hey, how do you feel? And it's heartbreaking to me, Brie, because they go, no one's ever asked me that. I actually don't know. Right? And they don't. And so we have to teach them, hey, every hour on the hour, I want you to send me a message with 3 feelings that you're having, other than like angry, horny, and breathing. Like you actually have to dig a little bit. Oh, you're sad. You've never admitted that before. You're frustrated. You're disappointed. You're afraid. You're hurt. Wow. Beautiful. How does that feel? How does it feel to have these energies in your body? And guess what? You're still alive, aren't you? And you were pretty sure that if you actually tapped into any of these, they'd kill you, weren't you? So it changes everything. It literally changes everything. But I think the most important thing for these men is they suddenly aren't alone in the world.
Yeah.
Whether they have a partner or not, most men feel isolated. And we're really good at it. Right? So suddenly we have a guy that may chime into the group saying like, hey, guess what? Lost my job. Not sure what I'm going to tell my wife. I feel like a failure, yada, yada. And 50 dudes underneath them are like, hey, we got you. No matter what happens here, you're not alone. We've been there. We support you. No one's giving them advice. And they're like, you know what? You got to keep your chin up, bro. It's just, hey, we got you. And that, Bree, like when I watch that and I realize this is a guy that doesn't need to go to the bar. This is a guy that doesn't need to go to the strip club on the way home. Nothing wrong with either of those, but he doesn't need to. He can actually sit in front of his partner and say, you know what, I'm scared. I'm still in the lead here. Yeah.
He has more capabilities that
1,000%
he can now use to connect and feel and express his feelings in ways that aren't self-destructive, or he's not feeling a compulsion to go and, like you said, go to the, like, it's like, I like that you pointed out that these activities can be healthy. I talk about that a lot.
No issue with any of them, if they're conscious.
Right, exactly. Same thing with what I teach women around eating junk food, for instance. We don't want to demonize things, right? It's when we feel compelled to do things where we feel like we have no control, that we are probably dealing with some kind of, this compulsion that's a mental detriment to us, that we're struggling with something else. It's not usually about the food or about the bar or the strip club, right? It's about something inside of ourselves that we're trying to suppress, or we haven't addressed, or we haven't found out the root cause of yet, to bring up your example from earlier. One of the things you brought up a few minutes ago, you were talking about porn, and in this culture of our computer screens and sort of our lack of human connection. I mean, we look back at what happened during COVID. People weren't actually connecting with each other as much in person. And there's just this rampant amount of, the porn industry is just massive. And I think talking about compulsion in that context and like how damaging that can be for men in their relationships with women in particular. Yeah. And I just think I'm so glad that you brought that up, and that is a big part of your book, that you talked about how that can be damaging. Because I think your example of it being like the chicken nugget. Can you tell me about that?
Reheated chicken nugget. Yeah.
Yeah. Why is that important?
It's important to me because I think I know for a fact, Bree, so many men are deeply craving intimacy, like real intimacy, not sexual intimacy, like actual, like feeling intimate with another person. Yet the number one thing they're most terrified of is that same intimacy. Right. Now, if I give them a fail-safe way to get 30% of that feeling, a lot of guys are going to take it. And that's porn. Because there's zero risk. There's not a drop of, it's never going to break up with me? Pornhub. It's never going to laugh at me if I lose my erection, or if I don't perform well, or if something goes awry, or there's an awkward moment. Pornhub. It's not going to break my heart or require me to show up differently, to integrate her desires, needs, humanity, body, all the things. Porn. It is literally the junk food of intimacy. Right. It is soulless. And I'm not saying this in the I'm not demonizing it, but there's no connection. We are all craving connection. That's what COVID taught me, was how many people are craving connection. What happened when we got back together? Like hugs were like, oh my God, these feel so good. Having dinner with 5 friends was like the best night ever. So one of the things I ask men to do immediately is to get off porn. Just say, hey, 90 days, right? Like you can always go running back to it. Trust me, there's like 70 billion hours of porn on the internet at any point. So it's not like it's going anywhere. Now, what feelings come up for you throughout the day that you didn't know you had? What anxieties were you and this is kind of a cliche or a pun, no pun intended, but like, were you squirting out the side with porn? Right? With my own porn use, I remember like I would look at a lot of porn when I got my credit card statement because I was in debt. And there was no point, Bree, where I was like, oh, debt, fuck, that makes me hard. I just love it. It's so exciting. It's so invigorating, right? Like never. It was like, I'm anxious. I'm disappointed in myself for having this. I'm not happy about where I am financially. Okay, I can't handle that feeling in my body. Let me go immediately get numb. Porn is a great attention capturer, right? It's really effective. I think it's great. It's like it works. Most guys aren't thinking about their bills, their partner, the fight they had, the fact that their kid got in trouble in school if they're looking at porn.
It's an escape.
It's an escape. It's a brilliantly designed escape.
But it has this cost.
It costs us real connection. It costs us actual intimacy. And I think it costs us that before we even get into sexuality, where it costs us infinitely more. Because suddenly porn teaches men two things: stay in your head, and it's all about your penis. That's it. Those are the two places you need to worry about. Now you get with a human, like, wait, what about this thing in the middle in my chest that's beating? What about these feelings I'm having in my stomach? What about this actual energetic interplay that's happening between these two people?
And also, what about the expectation of what our partner is supposed to perform like or look like? There's a sort of this bias that happens towards women as a result of all of this consumption of porn, which blocks the intimacy, as you said, but also creates this very skewed idea of how a woman is supposed to perform and what her role is supposed to be and what she's supposed to look like. And I think that is really damaging for everyone.
It's so damaging, and this is a longer term fear. But I remember 5 years ago, I was on an MMA forum, just like somewhere I would go and a bunch of guys would type in, like blah, 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 blah. And one of them said, hey, I tried VR porn today. And this is a guy in his 30s. And people were like, how was it? Right. And he said, it was so good, I decided never to go back to it. Because and this was 5 years ago when it was probably like it was pixelated. Now he's 30, so he's been with women. He's been in real situations. He's not 14, right? Where he's going, wow, this is what sex is. It's completely fabricated. It's completely photoshopped. It's completely enhanced. It's cartoonized. I can do whatever I want, whenever I want, without indication or feedback from another person. That's what scares me. Because now imagine spending the next 5 years doing that and then going out on a date with a human female. And like, this is weird. You're like, I can touch you. You're real. There's smells, there's sounds.
I can touch you with permission.
Yeah, I can touch you with permission.
Because then we have this whole other issue, right, that comes up because we don't learn the reality of actual consensual actions between partners. We don't learn the reality of how to communicate. So I just wanted to, we could talk about this subject for another hour, but sure. I just wanted to touch on this issue with porn because you had brought it up in your book and you mentioned that porn is to real actual sex like a day-old chicken nugget is to a real food meal. And I just thought that was such an apt
salad or something beautiful.
Right. Yeah. With protein, not just salad.
An organic meal. Yeah.
An organic meal. Yeah. Like something really delicious and homemade.
But it's so insidious. We don't have to stay on it. I just want to say lastly, it is so insidious. It is everywhere.
It is.
And it's
pervasive.
Also secret. It's silent. Like if I don't walk into a meeting and people be like, you kind of smell like porn. But they would if it was alcohol or dope or something else. So you have guys that are, literally in the bathroom at work. I had a client once who was like, I don't think I have a porn addiction, but I look at it in the elevators going up and down at work. And I was like, bro, if you had told me the same thing about alcohol, like I would be flying to your house and dragging you to an AA meeting right now.
Right. Because it's like he's got a consumption like association with it in a specific location. Oh, that's super interesting. And so true, like about it feeling like it's like this secret that people are keeping. Those are the things that we need to talk about these things more as men and women. And it makes me want to ask you, I'm really curious, like how can women support men in their uncivilized lifestyle if we were wanting to support men in this way? How can we see them and their pain and be a supportive partners, sisters, mothers, all of the roles that we have as women in men's lives? How can we support our men?
It's such a beautiful question. Thank you for asking it. And the cliche answer is first, do your own work. And that's for everybody. Do your own work. We love to finger point in this culture. And we love to say like, well, it's all him, right? It's all her. It's his fault. He's a pain in the ass. She's crazy. He's a narcissist. She's this. And do your work. And then all of us, I said this to a group of women last night when they said, well, what does a man need in a relationship? And I said, exactly what you need.
Right.
You need, I believe, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to speak out of turn here, but I think this is what you all need, what we all need. We need to be met. And first and foremost, in relationship, I need to be met. I need to know my partner's here and she can meet me. I need to be seen. Hey, I see all of you. I see the work that you're doing. I get that some days you fall flat on your face because this whole thing's going to trip you up a couple times, brother. And that's okay. I'm still here, but I see you. I acknowledge you. Wow. These are you're beautiful. I appreciate you. Thank you for doing this work. And then lastly, we celebrate each other. I'm so proud of you. I say this to my partner all the time. I'm so proud of you. We say it for the stupidest stuff, like not the most insignificant stuff. Why? Because neither of us grew up getting overly dosed with someone saying, I'm proud of you.
Yeah.
So I think it's that, like, have compassion, Brie, I think is the number one piece. I am not an 190-pound woman with hair and different genitals. I'm a man. I'm going to do things differently. I'm going to feel things differently than you will. I don't look at my partner and ask her to be as strong as I am physically. She's just not going to do it. Right? And so she knows there's ways that I operate in the world that will be different from hers. And so if I'm working on integration, please let there be time and room for mistakes. And here's the biggie, because I get it. We're like a decade behind you all. When something good happens, as opposed to being like, well, it should have been done 5 years ago. Actually celebrate this. Right?
It's great.
We get stuck in the like, why should I celebrate what should always be happening? I say, well, do you want the result or do you not want the result? Are you willing to step over your own ego and go, you know what? I see you trying. And I appreciate you trying. And you are the gateways to different higher levels of consciousness. Women are. I believe this. You just are. And so by introducing men to different principles, different ideas, different ways, because you're interested in it, that to me is what I see happening all the time with men. Like, hey, how did you find me? Oh, my wife gave me your book. She may have DM'd me on Instagram. It's like, hey, how do I give him this book without hurting his feelings? I'm like, give him the damn book. If it hurts his feelings, all the more reason he should call me. Right? But that's what I believe the role is here. That you are the gateways to higher levels of consciousness. So be okay first living in those higher realms. Be okay demanding more out of your relationship. Not in a demanding way, but saying, hey, how else are you besides fine today? Right? Hey, there's something that I really want to talk to you about. I can see that you're in pain and you probably don't even acknowledge it or allowed. You may not believe that you're allowed to be in pain in this relationship, but there's space for that here. I'm not going to leave. I'm not going to shame you. I'm going to put you down for being human. I think that's what I've seen work the best. And everybody wins. That's the like, you know what? Guess what? You're going to have better sex. You're going to have better conversations. You're going to eat different food. You're going to be going on different adventures. You're going to have someone who's waking up inspired.
Right.
That's the feedback when I get that from women. I'm like, all right, I'm on point here. This is working. It's doing what it's supposed to do.
You're serving women by serving men is what you're
1,000%.
Yeah.
Right?
And it's so cool.
1,000%.
I wanted to invite you to share that about your guidance for women because, we have a lot of women listening, and I wasn't surprised when you said a lot of your customers for the book were women, because I'm guessing your book it's got a very masculine, it's cool looking. That looks like, if I were a dude, I'd be like, ooh, I need that book. Like it'd look good in my bathroom or like my coffee table or like whatever, right? It's a cool looking book. And it's very it has a very masculine tone to it. And I imagine that the reason so many of your purchasers are women is because women are identifying that this is a book that they want their men to read. And I'm sure many women like myself are interested in just reading it purely for the content and seeing things in it that can be healing for us as well. But also very helpful. Like I've already bought it as a gift, like for a man, and just think that this is a really important thing to do. You guys can get it Audible format, Kindle format, paperback format. I think it's just a great resource. And you have another book as well. What's the name of that book?
Today I Rise. That was my
Today
first
I Rise.
one. Yeah.
Your first book. Yeah. So you got a couple great books out there. You've got some great TEDx talks that people can connect with. And
thank you.
I also just wanted to invite you to, my audience loves challenges. I love a good challenge. I was wondering if you maybe have a challenge that you could share with us so that in between listening to this episode and whenever the next episode comes out, they can keep you top of mind. They can keep this challenge that you've given them in mind to move forward with. And when they're looking up your work, they'll see how this little challenge has impacted them in a week or so. So do you have any suggestions for us? Something cool that we could try doing?
I'm trying to think of a way to tangibly do it, but here's one of the things that I've asked people to do for a week, or even 3 days if a week gets too long, is simply note how many times a day you apologize for being you in some capacity.
Oh my gosh, what an amazing challenge.
Right? Just note it. There's no judgment. There's no shame. There's no like, oh man, I'm such a bad person. I just apologized. It's just like a tick box. Like if you were doing it for somebody else. I think that's a great way to start getting down to the core of who people are, how they want to take their souls and express them into the 3D world. Is what is the permission that would be underneath the apology? You got to get rid of the apologies first. And it's like, actually, you know what? You can write that book. You can start that business. You can live this way. You can do whatever the hell you want as long as you're not hurting people. You have my permission. I think that's the best starter. It's just note, right? The very first ethos tenet I have for the men, for the 12 ethos, is be unapologetically male. And it's nuanced. People get upset with me about that one. I said, do you think we'd solve everything if everyone ran around apologizing for being who they were? If I thought it worked, I'd be all for it. But I don't. I think it really is about this reclamation of our hearts and our heart's desires in this world to say, you know what? This is who I am. This is what I'm going to do. This is why I'm here. I'm open to taking shit for it, but I'm certainly not going to apologize for being who I am.
Yeah, amen to that. That's great. So step one, awareness of when you're apologizing, and maybe a longer term step would be to take a look at the reason behind the apology and what's underneath it. Like you were saying, I think that's great guidance and I really appreciate it. I really appreciate you coming here and sharing so much with us about yourself and about your work and just your big, generous heart and how you care so much about men and women and humanity in general, and watching us all do better, be the best we can be, really.
Thank you. So, truly appreciate the space here.
Yes. Thank you so much for coming and being a guest. And thank you so much for listening today, Rockstar, and for being a part of the conversation. That challenge is a great one, and I hope you'll take it on. Please leave any comments or insights you had on the show over on the show notes page at thebettyrocker.com/podcast, where you can also find links shared in the episode and connect more with Traver and his work. Coming up next, I'm talking to body language expert Linda Clemens. You and I both know that a lot of what we communicate is nonverbal, and we have to draw on our intuition a lot in our dealings with others because sometimes their words and their actions just don't seem to match up. If you've ever wondered how to tell if someone is lying or telling the truth, this one is for you. If you've ever wished you could show up more confidently in the workplace or deepen the level of trust in your relationship, this one is for you. I've seen Linda in action, and it's like she's reading the minds of everyone in the room. Her ability to decipher body language is amazing. So she'll be here to break down her tips and tricks for us and leave you with some actionable steps you can use right away to crack the body language code. It's all coming up next, so stay tuned. And until next time, I'm Betty Rocker, and you are so awesome and amazing. Talk to you real soon.
This podcast is for information purposes only. Statements and views expressed on this podcast are not medical advice. This podcast, including Brie Argetsinger, Betty Rocker Inc., and the producers disclaim responsibility for any possible adverse effects from the use of information contained herein. Opinions of guests are their own, and this podcast does not endorse or accept responsibility for statements made by guests. This podcast does not make any representations or warranties about guest qualifications or credibility. Individuals on this podcast may have a direct or indirect financial interest in products or services referred to herein. Before starting a new exercise, fitness, or health protocol, or if you think you have a medical problem, always consult a licensed physician.